Hello and welcome. You're watching The Climate Clock, a special series on CNBC TV 18 where we discuss everything sustainability and climate change. And today we are going to discuss something really interesting. Environmental and energy stresses caused by the increase in demand for cooling has triggered several technology transitions in the air conditioning sector. In fact, CEEW has come out with an interesting report where they talk about how Internet of Things will be used for energy efficient transition. We have the author of the report, Shikha Bhasin, who is the Senior Program Lead at CEEW, joining us now to discuss this report. Shikha, hi. Thank you so much for joining us on CNBC TV 18. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. And, I was going through your report and some interesting data points here. The energy used to power cooling appliances contributes to the largest share of residential emissions, and 70% of an appliance's emissions are attributed to the use of refrigerants. Of course, we know that it is harmful, but we don't know how harmful it can get. As you were pointing out, it's a niche sector. What is your report suggesting? Another transformation to fix this? What is the real target of this report?
Right. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really glad to be sort of discussing the cooling conundrum that the world faces, because it is going to inform a really large part of the climate actions that all countries are moving towards. So while this is regulated under the Montreal Protocol or the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol, it's actually extremely central to development and climate action in general. If you think about cooling, it's such an intrinsic part of each of our lives, whether it is, the houses or the offices that we work in, or the healthcare, that our vaccines must be used to deploy the healthcare cold chain that we're looking at. Or if you think about agriculture in India, the kind of food wastage that we're experiencing, and we think about the doubling of farmers' income, there's going to be, the need for cold chain to get developed right from the farmer to the fork. And all of this is heavily contingent, on cooling. And as you mentioned, it does have a significant climatic impact. It does consume a lot of electricity. To put it a little bit in perspective, the emissions that come out of the refrigerants that are currently in use, if these are not regulated, which they have been agreed to be regulated, this is almost 0.5 degrees Celsius of warming that the world has already committed to try and curtail by making sure that they are switching over to cleaner, low global warming potential gases. On the energy front, you mentioned that 70% of it really does come from the electricity. To put that in perspective, Sonal, if you think about it, there are more than 1 billion people in the world today who are at risk due to lack of access to cooling technologies, and another 2 billion, more than 2 billion, in fact, who lack access to efficient cooling, right? So when you start thinking about the glut of the population that remains without access to cooling, and despite this, 10% of global electricity is already being used for cooling. Now, in cities like Delhi, 40 to 60% of our peak load consumption is actually due to cooling in the summers, the use of air conditioning within our houses and our offices. So as incomes rise, as aspirations increase, as climate change and warming increases, we know that the demand for cooling is going to increase, and it is imperative that it increases because the economic losses due to heat stress in India alone are expected to cost more than $450 billion by 2030. So not only is there a development and an equity angle to it, the fact that productivity, healthcare, well-being, and general sensibilities of being able to develop in an equitable manner are also completely contingent on cooling. We really need to think about how do we make sure that this cooling that we want to provide in an equitable manner, how do we ensure that it is in fact highly efficient and low in its global warming potential. There are these two technology transitions already underway. India has led one of the most successful star labeling programs when it comes to our refrigerators, air conditioners. India has also very recently ratified or agreed to ratify the Kigali Amendment. The details of that, the roadmap for that is going to be expected in 2023. So we know that we are going to be curbing down the use of global warming gases to cool really the spaces that we have air conditioners in. But there's also a simultaneous technology transition that my colleague Himanshu and I have made a note of in this study, which is the Internet of Things, right? This newness of smart devices, is something that we're all seeing increasingly being used in our homes and across our offices. And essentially, all that it is that it's a system of interrelated, internet connected objects, right? That are able to collect and transfer data over a wireless network. So that's really what the Internet of Things means. And the way that we as consumers see it is through smart devices, be it your home devices, whether it's your electrics or your electricity powered devices. You're seeing this, really increase, and it is happening in the space of air conditioners as well. And the reason that we wanted to focus on this is because when you have efficiency increases coming in from an industry point of view that are being mandated by the government, when you have new gases or new refrigerants coming in, there's also an impact that this has on the current jobs within the operations and maintenance sector. And to us, the coming in of the Internet of Things also is a technology transition that the folks who are actually operating and maintaining our equipment are going to have to be trained on. So that was really the starting point for us to start looking at the Internet of Things.
So Shikha, two-part question here. As you mentioned, we already have two technologies in place. Internet of Things will be the new one that we should adapt now. But how will it change things? If you can just give it to us through an example, using devices, using internet, what would it do to overall emissions generally? And the regulations that are already in place, are they enough? Are they actually making an impact?
Right. So I'll start with the second one. When we think about the regulations, right, these are commitments that have been made. They are not yet regulations, but they will be informed by regulatory action domestically. So this is an international treaty. It's actually the most successful international environmental treaty. It's called the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol. And what this has stipulated is for 197 countries by the middle of the century will phase down the use of HFCs, which are your high global warming gases, significantly by 2050. And what India has recently done is approve the ratification of this amendment, which means that given the timeline that we have committed to, we will slowly start converting from high global warming gases to lower global warming gases within our air conditioning systems. A really important aspect here, which sort of connects with IoT then, is when we start this technology transition towards lower GWP or global warming potential gases, it is your servicing technicians who need to know how to handle this because, these are gases, they're gases, they don't come with appropriate labels on them. And a lot of them have characteristics that will require additional or different security features, I should say, right? Some of them are a little bit more toxic. Some of them are a little bit more flammable. So the people who are coming into our offices and our houses to service these air conditioners that will be mandated to carry these gases already need to start going through a reskilling, and a training program to ensure that they know what they are doing, not just for their own safety, but also for the safety of those around them. Another really important aspect here is that servicing is responsible for about 40% of the refrigerant consumption. Servicing is also responsible for about 60 to 80% of the energy efficiency of your unit. So you can buy the best 5-star AC that the market has to offer, but if your installation and your servicing is not being done regularly enough, you're actually not accruing the energy savings benefits that you are, paying upfront for. And so that's why at CEEW, we have a very clear focus, on the servicing sector. We want to be able to accord greater dignity and opportunities to the technicians in this. And we work very closely with the ozone cell instituted within the Ministry of Environment to make sure that the policy target of formalization, which we've captured within the India Cooling Action Plan, gets realized. So there are government programs that are already moving in that direction. Of course, the pandemic has made it a lot harder to be able to access a lot of the informal sector workers, which is the majority of the servicing technician. And that's why the aspect of the Internet of Things or IoT-enabled devices becomes really interesting, because you will now suddenly have a customer whose device will be able to prompt her or him to
Yeah.
be able to get a preventive servicing done. What it
Okay.
will also do is be able to help manage the energy savings and the energy consumption of our devices far better.
Hmm.
So you're almost democratizing, the data of your usage of a device, because not too many of us actually have smart meters connected to our AC,
Yes.
right? So we're not sure how much it's consuming vis-a-vis how much it should be consuming. But with the Internet of Things, that happens. A second opportunity that does come up with the Internet of Things is, and this is something that we started to see during COVID, is that the service providers are getting aggregated, right? So whether it is Urban Company or other online portals that suddenly started, creating a pool of trained technicians that we could access via our apps on our phones. That's
Hmm.
another way of, slowly bringing that entire community of informal technicians into the formal economy. And
Okay.
with the formal economy, of course, their access to training, their access to equipment, their access to finance and social security programs that should be available to them quite easily, are more readily available to them.
Okay. Shikha, we have a lot more questions, but we are completely out of time. But thank you so much for those insights. And this is something which should be discussed even more, because we use refrigerators and air conditioning on a daily basis. So thank you so much for those inputs on this particular segment. With that, we'll wrap on this edition of the Climate Clock. But do stay tuned. We have a lot more coming up for you.